In this video, I'll show you how to configure and connect to an FTP server on Oracle Linux. We'll install the vsftpd package on the server, look at the configuration file, enable the vsftpd service, and configure the firewall. Once we've set up the server, we'll then look at connecting to it from a client system. We'll install the FTP package on the client, connect to the FTP server, and then download and upload some files. So let's get started by configuring the FTP server. First, we'll install the vsftpd package and look at the configuration file. We'll mostly be working as root, so I'll enter sudo su. Then I'll enter dnf install vsftpd. And I'll clear the screen. Settings are stored in the vsftpd.conf file, so let's take a look at it with vi/etc/vsftpd/vsftpd.conf. I'll leave the majority of the settings within this file for you to explore on your own. You can take a look at the man pages to see all the options, but I will highlight a couple of important things. Depending on your distro, this default file might look a little different. The default has anonymous access disabled, it allows local users to connect, and allows users to write data. If we page forward, we can see that the log file is stored by default in the var/log/x4log directory. And if we go down a little further, there's a line where we can configure a welcome banner. To keep things simple, the only thing I'll adjust in this file is the banner, so that we can see that change when we connect later. I'll uncomment this line, and instead of blah, I'll say the most awesome FTP service. And I'll save the file. Next, we'll enable the service and configure the firewall. I'll use systemctl enable vsftpd, then systemctl start vsftpd. And to verify it's running, I'll use systemctl status vsftpd. And we can see that it's active. Depending on your environment, your firewall settings may be different. But for this demo, I'll use firewall-cmd-permanent --zone equals public --add-service equals FTP. I'll restart the firewall with firewall-cmd-reload. Then I'll check to make sure that the FTP service has been added to the firewall by using firewall-cmd-list-all. And we can see FTP listed as a service. Finally, we'll want to make sure we have some content within the home directory of the user that we'll be connecting with on the client system. I'll be using the OPC user to connect. If we use ls, we can see that I already have some files and a directory here, but if you need something quick to test with, you can add a dummy file using fallocate. I'll exit out of sudo so that we create it as the OPC user. I'll use fallocate-l, then specify a size, and I'll call it FTP test. If we use ls, we can see that file in the OPC home folder. That's it for the server setup, so next let's take a look at connecting to it from a client system. I'm now in the terminal on a different system that's going to act as the client, which we'll use to connect to the FTP server that we just configured. The first step is to install the FTP package with sudo dnf install ftp. I'll enter FTP, and we can see that the prompt changes. If I type ? It'll pull up a list of valid commands. Some of the most commonly used ones will likely be git to download files from the server, and put to upload files to the server. But a handy command is the !, which will temporarily exit the FTP prompt and drop you back into the shell. To connect to the FTP server, I'll use open and then the IP address of my server system. We can see our custom welcome banner here, and it's going to provide a suggested username, in this case client user. If I wanted to use that, I could hit enter, but I want to log in as the OPC user on the server, so I'll type OPC and I'll enter my password. Note that it's allowing me to do this because we have the local enable setting set to yes in our vsftpd.conf file, which allows users defined locally on the FTP server to log in. To orient ourselves, I'll enter pwd, and we can see that we're in the home directory for OPC. If I use ls, it'll provide the directory listing, and I can use cd to change directories. To download a file from the server, I can use git and then the name of the file. By default, it's going to download into whatever working directory you were in when you launched FTP. And to find out where that is, we can type lcd, which shows the client user home directory. If we type exclamation mark, we can temporarily exit the FTP prompt. Then using ls, we can see that doc1 file in my current home directory. But let's say we want to place the files we get from the FTP server into a particular directory. I'll create a directory with mkdir, and I'll call it downloads. If we type exit, it will take us back to the FTP prompt. To tell it to download to a specific directory, I can use lcd and then the absolute path, which is /home/client-user/downloads. Let's download another file with git doc2, which should now place it into that download folder. To get multiple files, I can use mgit, and then if I only wanted a certain file type, I can use wildcard and specify an extension, such as .txt. It's important to note that this will only work in the working directory, it won't search recursively. It'll ask if I want this particular file. I'll answer Y for yes, and it's going to ask me about a second file. Again, I'll say yes. If we jump out of FTP with exclamation mark, you can see we're automatically in the downloads directory. If we use ls, there's the doc2 file and the text files we just downloaded. Let's try uploading something to the server. So I'll change to my home directory, and I'll create a file with fallocate-l. I'll specify 2 megabytes, and I'll call it upload1. I'll type exit to go back to FTP, then I'll use put upload1. It says there's no file. That's because my FTP local directory is still that downloads folder, so that's where it's looking for that upload1 file. But that file is actually in the client user home directory. So I'll need to change the FTP local directory with lcd/home/client user. Now let's try put upload1. And there we go. If we use ls, we can see our upload1 file. I'll type close to disconnect from the FTP server and exit to quit the FTP client. That's all there is to configuring and connecting to an FTP server. Thanks for watching.